Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my Week 6 power rankings for college football. I had this thing broken down based off of the teams that I feel like have the strongest chance to win a national title. And please let me know your thoughts as we're going through this down in the comments section. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, coming in at number 10, I have USC. Their strength of schedule is currently 53rd, and their remaining strength of schedule is going to be 34th. They have wins over LSU, Utah State, and Wisconsin. They have one loss to Michigan. That game was in Ann Arbor, and they only lost at 27-24. Now, I do have USC ranked over Michigan on my list. It's just because I think that, man, if they played 10 times, USC would probably win at least 8 of those. Michigan just doesn't really have a very dynamic offense. It's extremely run heavy, whereas USC is a much more balanced team. I actually feel like USC won that game up in Ann Arbor, but the scoreboard did not show that. So overall, man, USC is a team that on both fronts, it doesn't really wow you. I think that they're just good enough to crack into the top 10, but they've got some really good skill players. I like how their quarterback operates. I like their offensive scheme. I like their scheme on defense too. So, they've really picked it up. I love the way that they kind of fly around, they're going after that football and they're wrapping up, their fundamentals, all that type of stuff. It looks a lot better. They are a team that I feel like if they make it to the playoffs, could maybe upset a team in that first round. I just don't see them having a great opportunity to win the whole thing. Number 9 is going to be Mizzou. Their strength of schedule is currently 120th, but their remaining strength of schedule is actually 16th. I don't know exactly who all they have coming up. I want to say Alabama's on that list, but who else do they have that's going to make their strength of schedule, that tough? That's going to be interesting. But they currently have wins over Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and then they went into double overtime last weekend with Vandy. And then, that game with Boston College, that one was pretty close too. So I think that Mizzou is another one very similar to like a USC, but they're going to be better on both fronts. I think that they do have some guys that can definitely stop that run, that can get after the passer. Maybe not as much, obviously, as some of these teams that we will be talking about throughout this video, but they've got some good skill players. They've got a pretty good offensive scheme, a whole lot of stretch plays, outside zone plays. And I feel like if a defense finds a way to kind of slow that down, their offense just takes a huge step backwards. So it's probably not as versatile as some of these other offenses. And it's something about this team, man, that they're only good like every few years. This is probably going to be one of their down years because they were pretty decent. They were actually pretty good last year. I'll go ahead and give Dork and his bunch credit for that. And, I'm not putting him here because I'm hating on him or, hating on their team, even though I really can't stand them. It's really just because of who they are. I think that they were kind of overhyped coming into this season. And it won't be long, man, until they end up falling off with what we came into the season looking at as one of the weakest schedules in the SEC. So, I would expect for them probably not even to make it to the playoffs, but I had them at this spot at this point just because, yeah, they're probably a lot better than most of the other teams that could be on the cusp if you look at them from top to bottom. Number 8 is Penn State. Their strength of schedule is 98th, and their remaining strength of schedule is 21st. They have wins over West Virginia, Bowling Green, Kent State, and Illinois. That game last weekend, man, I was impressed by the way that Penn State went out there and they dominated. They were able to hold Illinois to only 34 yards on 32 carries. That's like 1.1 yards per carry. So that run defense is strong. That's something that we weighed pretty heavily on this one because, again, man, we're talking about the playoffs. In the playoffs, you got to be able to run the football. You got to be able to stop the run. And you still have to find some threats on the outside. That's something that I was hoping to see a little bit more of from Penn State. Still haven't really seen that. But, that would probably be my biggest concern with their offense. And then also, man, their quarterback got sacked 7 times. I don't know how that happens. A ton of that had to have been somewhat at least on him. But you got to look at that offensive line. They've got to get that stuff together if they want to have a chance in the playoffs. But I would say that they probably will end up making it. I had them as a team that would more than likely get put out in the first round just because, again, man, until you can find somebody on the outside as a threat, teams will be able to stack that box up and force you to try to, do that when it's a one-on-one coverage. And until you can do that, you're probably not going to have a good chance to win the whole thing. Coming in at number 7, we have Oregon. Their strength of schedule is currently 85th, and their remaining strength of schedule is 32nd. They have wins over Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State, and last weekend, UCLA. We all know that it's about running the football and stopping the run, and Oregon showed that they could do that versus UCLA. They held them to 47 yards on the ground on 24 carries, and they ran the ball well. On 36 carries, they had 153 yards. So, those are the things that we're talking about. The front seven needs to look good. And, yeah, UCLA, they're not that good of a team. Their front sevens, it's not going to be good on either side of the football. But, I think that you just got to kind of take care of business versus whoever you're facing every single weekend. And it looks like Oregon has been doing that. I think that they're getting better and better every single weekend. So I'm starting to get a little bit more confidence in their chances moving forward. They also threw the ball 42 times, and that's a little bit concerning for me. I think that they need to try to, stick to that run game as much as possible. But they did have 278 yards through the air, and they didn't give up any sacks. That was a big question mark with this team earlier in the season is, man, look, last year they only gave up 4 or 5 sacks or something, and they had given up that many sacks in like 2 or 3 games. So there were some question marks about their offensive line, but, looks like they are starting to get things figured out. So I think that they are a team that maybe could make some noise. We'll see how they do versus some better competition, especially in the Big Ten. Number 6 for me is going to be Miami. They actually dropped 3 spots from the last time that we did this, and we'll get to why in just a second. But their strength of schedule is currently 94th, and their remaining strength of schedule is 48th. They have wins over Florida, FAMU, Ball State, South Florida, and Virginia Tech last Friday. Now, that game is the main reason that I'm bumping them down some. I'm still high on them, but I need for them to prove to me that they will come out and take care of business. It just looked like they were sleepwalking versus those Hokies. And if they do that versus better competition, which I don't know how much better the competition is going to get for them unless they see Clemson at some point this season. But if they sleepwalk through these games, I mean, we've seen that a lot with Mario Cristobal. His teams just sometimes don't get up to play. And if they do that, it's a very strong likelihood that they could lose. If they lose one game, I don't think that maybe they don't even make it to the playoffs. So you have to get in it to have the chance to win it. And I think that if you look at the way that this Hurricane team is built, they can win it. They've got a really good offensive line. Obviously, they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. He looks like he's going to win the Heisman. He makes magic happen. He, extends the plays with his legs, throws it down the field, all the different armor angles and stuff like that. But he comes out, he's so laid back, he's too laid back. And I think that his team kind of feeds off of that energy too. He's got to come out just a little bit more sharp early on. And I think that would help his team out. Also, man, they need to find a way to be dedicate themselves to the run a little bit more. It's almost like they just run the ball to stop from passing on every single play. So if they could do that, if they could find some more real balance, then I think that, man, this team could be very dangerous. I still, I also have some concerns about their defense. They didn't really stop the Hokies run game that much. So, you got to get out of man coverage sometimes. You got to switch things up. You got to bring some blitzes, load that box up. Whatever you have to do. It just didn't look like the Hurricanes defense adjusted very well, and that all goes back to coaching. So if there's any reason that I'm a little bit lower on Miami than I was before, it's definitely going to be due to their coaching. Number 5 is going to be Ohio State. Their strength of schedule is 123rd, and their remaining strength of schedule is 19th. They haven't really played anybody. They have wins over Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, and then Michigan State. This is a Power 4 team, but at the same time, they're really not that good. I've watched a whole lot of film on this team. I have a lot of question marks about their scheme because it just looks like it is going to be so easy to stop for teams that have, better talent levels. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can just play man-to-man coverage on them and you can stop everything that they do. It's not a lot of different combinations with the routes. It's kind of gimmicky. I think that they're going to struggle, man. And, they've got some good teams coming up. Iowa, that's a game that could end up being a little bit closer than the experts think. Now, Iowa still don't think that they have the best talent, but at least they'll be able to, or, they might at least try to man up with the Buckeyes. If you man up versus them, if you kind of stack that box, I think that they're going to have some trouble being able to move the football on a consistent basis. They also have Oregon coming up. So, they will be tested, and we'll know a whole lot more about this team coming out of these tests. But yeah, just again, looking at them on film, whole lot of talent. Don't love the schemes. Don't love their coaching staff either. I think that Ryan Day, he's just found ways to squander away so much talent, maybe more than anybody else has, in such a long time. So we'll see. I actually think that at the end of this season, Michigan's going to beat them again because Michigan matches up perfectly with the Buckeyes. But we'll see as time goes on. Number 4 is Georgia. Their strength of schedule is 2nd in the country, and their remaining strength of schedule is 4th. They have wins over Clemson, Tennessee Tech, and they barely scraped by beating Kentucky. We all know that they lost last weekend versus Alabama. And, just seeing the way that Georgia kind of came back in that second half as a guy that can't stand Georgia, it's a little bit concerning for me because I think maybe it could change the mindset of this football team where, they start slow, man. Like, their first half really for the past few seasons has been really, really weak. And, I thought that would maybe get them this season because they have a much tougher schedule. But now maybe they'll come out and actually take care of business in the first half versus teams. But I still, as much talent as Georgia has, I still don't think that they're going to be able to make it through the rest of this season unscathed. I think that they'll lose at least one more game, possibly 2 to 3 more. The main reason for that is up front, especially on that offensive line, they're not moving people. Like, they're not dominant how they were in previous seasons. And if you can't run the football on a consistent basis, especially in the SEC, you're going to struggle to beat some of these teams. I also don't, I don't like how their run defense looks. You know what I mean? They have guys that are just kind of flying all over the place all the time. They're doing a whole lot of 3 deep and bringing 7, bringing 8. It seems like on every single first play of every game. And teams are starting to be able to scheme up versus them because now they're actually going to be seeing teams that can match up with them physically. And, we've talked about this for the longest time. Their scheme isn't really hard to beat. You just have to be able to match up with them. So we'll see what happens. But I think that if, Georgia wants to continue to be one of these dominant teams, or, if they want to be the dominant team that they really think that they are, you got to be able to run the doggone football. And I just don't see them being able to do that much with this offensive line it's underwhelming to say the absolute least. So we'll see how they do for the rest of this season. I only have them at number 4 because I don't believe as much in the Buckeyes. I think that they've got a team that, we just talked about them, but I just think that their scheme, their stuff is even easier to stop than Georgia's is. So these are 2 teams that are very, very similar in several ways. But if they played, I think that Georgia would probably take it to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 3 is going to be Alabama, and their strength of schedule is currently 26th. Their remaining strength of schedule is 11th. They have wins over Western Kentucky, South Florida, Wisconsin, and as we just talked about, UGA last weekend. So there's a lot of things that you do like about this team. I think that they're playing a lot more loose. We've talked about how their scheme is a lot, it looks a lot simpler than it was up under Coach Saban. They goes for offense and defense. So, maybe we won't see as many busts. Maybe the, players are going to be able to play a little bit faster, play with some more confidence. I'm starting to see some of those things. And I really like their offensive line. I wouldn't say that it's the best in the entire country, but, it's definitely up there. It's probably top 3. So, I think that they'll be able to stick in any game because of their offensive line. They can run the football, whether that's with their quarterback or with the actual running backs. They've got 2 or 3 really, really good ones. So I think that they can present a whole lot of challenges to you. They stretch the field out vertically. They stretch it out horizontally. So there's a lot to have to game plan for just to try to stop this offense with a whole lot of really good football players. And then, if you look at their defense, I think that they're pretty good with their front. But the thing about it is, what is their secondary going to do, right? I mean, you can't just play man-to-man coverage all the time, all these one-high looks. And then they've got some guys that we've seen, especially in the second half versus Georgia. I mean, you throw some jump balls to them, they're not always going to win that. So I also don't think that they have an overwhelming pass rush, but they are, in my mind, probably the 3rd strongest team in the country. We'll see what happens coming up over the next couple of weeks. How do they look versus Vandy? Can they, and I know that sounds crazy, but can they handle business there? Because I think that Vandy will present some challenges to them. If they come out and if they blow Vandy, just blow them out, then I will have a little bit more confidence in this Alabama team. But we really won't know until the 3rd Saturday in October versus my Volunteers if they really have the chance, or, if they really are going to be one of these top 3 teams for the rest of the season. But I would say that at this point, I think that they've got a pretty good shot maybe to win the whole doggone thing. Number 2 is going to be my Tennessee Volunteers. Strength of schedule is number 72, and the remaining strength of schedule is going to be 9th. So far, we have wins over UT Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, and Oklahoma. Now, this is a team, man, that I have up really in my tier 1 with the number 1 team. And then after that, tier 2 would be the teams that I have ranked from 3 to, I think, 5. But I think that there's a pretty good separation between tier 1 and tier 2, just because the top 2 teams that I have on my list are just complete teams. You're not seeing very many, if any, holes. We're talking about front sevens on both sides. Really, really good. I love how Tennessee's pass rush looks. I love how Tennessee's linebackers looks. 3rd level looks great in coverage. And obviously everything there works hand in hand. We can run different styles. We can bring different blitz packages, things like that. But also, if you look at that offensive line, like we talked about, very stout. It's getting deeper and deeper because our starting tackles have, played kind of sparingly. They've played in spurts, but we should be back 100% healthy, hopefully this weekend versus Arkansas. So, everyone's getting those reps, but we've looked, I would say, pretty dominant for the most part outside of that Oklahoma game where we just had one player that wasn't playing up to his full potential, but we would expect that he won't do that 2 weekends in a row. We'll see. But the whole thing is, guys, it starts up front, okay? If you can be dominant on both fronts, everything else is kind of gravy. But I mean, listen, talking about that, offense, we've got really good running backs. D. Samp's one of the best in the entire country. Then you got Bishop. I think he's up there too. You also have Cam Seldon, who we haven't seen much of. Peyton Lewis, Keith, just a stable of guys that, a lot of folks don't understand or that people just don't know about that I think can do it at a really high level. Tight ends, we got 3, 4 of them that are all really, really good. They do a great job helping us out blocking, going out, catching passes. And then we've got a stable of, wide receivers. I think we go about, 7, 8, 9, 10 deep of guys that can get it done. And then, we've got Nico, who is a star, and, he's a dual threat. And you need that X factor once you get deeper into this playoff run. But I think that Tennessee for sure should be a team that you look at as, a favorite to make it to that national title game. Probably should be a favorite to make it to the SEC championship game as well. And, we've just shown that, hey, even though we have not stretched the field out vertically as much, we haven't really had to, but whenever we have had to, we've shown that we're capable of doing that as well. So I think that Tennessee is a very, very well-rounded team that can match up well with anyone in the entire country. Number one is going to be the Texas Longhorns, and I'm going to have them at number one until somebody can prove to me that they are not the best team in the entire country. Just like we talked about with Tennessee, I mean, from top to bottom, they can match up styles with anybody. But let's go through all their numbers right here, okay? Strength of schedule is ranked 82nd, and their remaining strength of schedule is going to be 15th. They have wins so far this season over Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, Louisiana, Monroe, and then last weekend over Mississippi State. Some people are saying that Texas didn't look dominant versus Mississippi State, but let me go through some of their numbers, okay? First off, let's start off with their backup quarterback. They have the best backup quarterback in the entire country. I don't know that it's even close, and that's it. That's a great luxury to have for sure. But Arch Manning, his numbers were 26 for 31, which is about 84%. He had 325 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. Okay, that's just passing. So if you can have a backup quarterback do this versus an SEC team, albeit maybe the worst SEC team, in the SEC, in that whole conference, they're still an SEC team. They've got talent. It's not like going up against one of these slouch, Big 10 or Big 12 teams. There's a difference there. Okay, so let's please keep that in mind. Also, okay, it's all about being able to run that football. Again, I think that Texas is a very balanced team, but they've shown that they can be dominant on the ground. So they had 198 yards on 30 carries, which is 6.6 yards per carry, and they had 3 touchdowns on the ground. One of those touchdowns did come from Arch Manning. So they have 2 quarterbacks that can operate at a high level, and they're also dual threat. So they've got 2 ballers right there at that, at that spot. But I think that just looking at their front on offense, it's really dominant. It's really, really good. Again, they're going to do a good job of keeping their quarterbacks clean and also opening up those running lanes and things like that. They play with an edge. They got that nasty streak to them. And then also, man, their front on defense, dude, they had 6 sacks versus Mississippi State. You hear me? 6 sacks. That is a big deal. I don't care who you're playing up against. So, yeah, the pass rush is really good. Their linebackers, man, P and I have watched a lot of film on this Texas team. I mean, just all 3 levels, okay? I could go on and on and on. But all 3 levels, they have guys that can definitely get it done. I don't see very many weaknesses or holes really in their entire team, outside of the fact that, although, man, I think that Sark is a really good play caller, the thing about his offensive scheme and some of his play calls is you see some dangerous stuff. And that's why I think teams like Oklahoma or teams that have a little bit more time to get ready for Texas tend to have a little bit more success versus their offense. Because if you can scheme up and understand what they're trying to do, see their tendencies, then, man, I think especially with guys like Quinn, who, I mean, look, I think that he is a baller, but he's going to put the ball into harm's way sometimes. I think that you can turn them over some. And if you could just kind of keep it close, then who knows who's going to win at the end of the day. But yeah, I think that Texas, man, there's just not very many weaknesses. They probably run the RPO better than anybody in the entire country. So it is a nightmare. They're going to keep you on your toes. You got to stay balanced. And this is a team that you really need to be able to match up with them physically to be able to beat them. But that is my top 10. Please let me know yours down in the comment section. And as always, thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Peace.